Hi, Frank.
Hello.
It is so nice to see you,
Absolutely.
and thank you so much for inviting us into your home
Sure.
and allowing us to spend a few minutes with you.
Yes.
This is great. I love it. And you know I love you. So it makes it extra special. So I wrote down some questions to ask you, and I hope that, we can capture who you are, who
Sure.
I know you are. I would like to know that Sojourners understands who you are.
Sure.
Okay? So in articles written about you, there's a recurring theme. It says, artist Frank Walker captures the value of human life.
Yeah.
I'm curious about how your childhood and background influenced this sense of value for human beings.
Probably very strongly were people that used to work for my grandfather, who were from all walks of life, but basically predominantly African American.
Mm-hmm.
And later on, I would discover these men who had worked for him had seen combat, and they were very strong. Just always came to work. People with no excuses, they just came to work. And my grandfather had a billboard business, the only black outdoor advertising company on the East Coast.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was black owned, and so most of the crews were black. And my friends from school and their parents, I remember one of my best friends, and I went to his house once over on Page Street, and there was a bucket and pans all over the floor. It was raining. And I remember his family being so impoverished, the rain just had to help hide your tears.
Yeah.
And he was a good friend of mine. He was an incredible football player.
Wow.
And I always remembered him,
Yeah.
as a
So all of
child.
this took place right here in Charlottesville.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, because you were born in Charlottesville.
Yeah, and this was sort of, way before integration.
Wow.
In schools, we went to segregated schools up to
Mm-hmm.
7th, 8th grade.
Wow.
And then it changed, and I always said it, said, well, what was that like? I said, well, you took away my James Brown and made me listen to Three Dog Night. So the culture shock was trying to force this culture on you,
Right.
and this is what we go back and forth with this lost cause,
Right.
trying to force this culture on us, thinking that it was okay to be clamored and chained and put in a closet somewhere, it didn't make you go to work all day, so that was supposed to be acceptable, and it was not. So things in my life, and I reflect in my art, are historically significant in terms of people's struggle. Because when I got older and I started to study and educate myself about things that, because the things I discovered right here in this house, upstairs in this attic, were people from Jefferson School who had graduated in the class of 1936.
So you were raised in this house?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, my grandfather built this house in, I think, 1925.
Wow.
And so, but this was the third place, I think, the family landed, because eminent domain, where Lane High School was the first reference to that.
Right.
And then my great grandmother had a house where City Hall is. That was taken, and so every place seems like we landed.
Right.
The city came and got it with some sort of eminent domain.
Yeah.
We lost the billboard business because the Queen of England came through, along with Lady Bird Johnson, and started the Highway Beautification Act, which pretty much destroyed, or they wrote ordinances to destroy the sign business. They had 250 signs.
Is that one of the signs I see attached to the side of the driveway? I see a sign.
Yeah, it says Jackson.
It says Jackson?
Yeah.
Is that one?
I saved it, yeah.
You are amazing.
Yeah, and I got some more downstairs. There's probably an old box of them.
You're amazing. You got so many stories.
So
to
I
tell.
put it in, that's where it operated from, was right downstairs.
Yeah.
And
Oh, that's great.
there was, right underneath here is a shower room where
Uh-huh.
the Jefferson football team came here and they showered after the game. And so this
You
was,
should write a book. Are you going to write a book?
this is a big, I think it's probably my cousin is writing it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah,
My
because
cousin
certainly,
wrote it.
I mean, the stories. The
Because that was
stories are outstanding.
a critical piece of issue. And even guys, when I was in high school, you thought you were tough.
Right.
You are not as tough as your uncles and your father. Because when they played football, they had leather helmets with no face guard.
That's right. And they didn't have all
They
these
busted each other in the face on a regular basis.
That is so funny. That's funny. So this place is just, this whole area that you live in is just, the stories are just outstanding.
Yeah, this was a predominantly black neighborhood.
Yeah, it's a black
Yeah,
neighborhood.
the white people live down Brown Street on the other side
Uh-huh.
of the hill.
So the school, you went to the Jefferson School.
Yes.
Did you learn anything about the neighborhood history in school? Did you have teachers who talked about it? Or?
Not very often. Not that it was forbidden. I mean, we
Yeah.
knew people. The one teacher lived across the street, Miss Cole,
Mm-hmm.
and various people. They weren't far away. There was a whole bunch of them that lived over on Dice Street,
Mm-hmm.
Ridge Street, which was
Yeah.
basically
Where Mr.
predominantly
Williams
black
lives,
communities.
I remember this.
Yeah, and we knew them, but a lot of times teachers were from out of town or they migrated here from college.
Were they mostly black teachers?
Yeah, all of them.
They were all black teachers.
All of them were black teachers,
Mhm.
and including Madame Byers, Miss Byers, who later on I would discover that her husband was a World War II Munford Point Marine, and her son, Billy, who would be drafted and go on to fight in Vietnam, who just passed away last year. But interestingly, people that I discovered in various parts of history is just, to me, is phenomenal. Stories that have just that come out. As a matter of fact, this piece up here behind me was inspired by going to McDonald's in the morning. And I don't know if you heard me tell this story or not,
I don't
but the
think so.
guys would all sit around and we hear these stories from older soldiers.
From the older ones.
Especially from World War II, and the guy that this is sort of representing Mr. Braxton,
Okay.
who was in World War II, went out to the Pacific, and while out in the Pacific, Jim Crow standards in the military was the black troops rode on the bottom of the boat and the white troops to the upper decks. And so this particular day was a nice sunny day, so everybody decides to go up on to the top deck. The whites were on the front and the blacks were on the back. Well, anyway, the ship got hit by a Japanese torpedo.
Did it hit the front?
It hit the side, and Mr. Braxton said, "You ain't never seen a boat get integrated so fast."
Everybody ran.
And he said they stayed out in the water for 72 hours.
Oh my God.
Because the ship sank, and nobody could come get them because when ships are in convoy and one gets hit, they take evasive action and keep moving.
And they just
So nobody came back around to pick them up till a couple of days later.
Wow.
And in shark-infested waters, and
Right.
sitting there in oil-soaked water,
Right.
flopping around, and how do you survive that is, and then leave there and have to go to war.
And then go to war.
Right. Right.
Well, I've been looking at your art for many, many years, and I enjoy it. And I even have a piece in my home.
Yes.
You remember, the
Yeah.
Lord moved me to get that
Yeah.
piece. After about 3 years of looking at it, saying, I need this. I finally got it, and I'm so pleased with it. So it really kind of leads me into, because I can see that, your whole life living here, everything here, I can see that that all influenced the things that you do.
Yeah.
So this interview that I'm doing today with you is part of a worship service where we will celebrate the diverse images of God, as well as the diverse children of God.
Sure.
We're all made in God's image. And so can you talk about what really inspires you to paint, and what inspires you to choose the images you do. Now, you just mentioned this gentleman from McDonald's. So, is that a general theme for you? Are you inspired by the people around you?
Always, always I think, and once I find out people's history and what they had done at some point in their life, it's very inspiring. I think that religiously, I was raised as an Episcopalian.
Oh, so was it?
Mother, and just the church that we grew up in. Just recently, about 5 years ago, the Episcopal Church up on High Street wrote a letter apologizing for not being integrated. All those years. The black church had to be able to separate church. And so once you learn that, and then you realize that God didn't do that by design, there certainly was a purpose for it, and how He made that grow out of something else.
Right.
But this interesting story, I have always seen all of my life. We always saw the images of God as a white person. We always saw that. Now, later on in life, I would see, just out of curiosity, I'm looking up images of Jesus Christ. Even Rubens, the great painter, painted himself removing Christ from the cross. But the white European influence. It
was the influence.
And so when I studied art history, there was a great influence of the whites were, blue-eyed, moving around in the desert and not being touched by the sun.
No tan.
So we look at these images, and we all know God could make Jesus look like whatever He wanted to look like. True, because He's God.
Right.
But we discovered, we look up 1,000 images of Jesus Christ, and then all of a sudden you see all this diversity.
Yeah.
You see all of this diversity. Black, Rastafari, you name it.
Yeah.
You see it. Even Bela Lugosi, Dracula, actually took pictures of himself as Jesus Christ. And I even created one myself, that one and another one. That image right there is next to me.
Oh, yes, I see.
And that hung in Trinity Church for the longest time until the new pastor came in and said, I don't want that in the sanctuary. Really? And all the parishioners said, I love that piece because it makes me, everywhere I go, it looks at me, and I have to think of
the eyes follow.
The
eyes follow.
And so it ended up making my daughter said she wants it, and I'm gonna let her have it. But I created another one, a black Jesus Christ, and I gave it to a young pastor who was starting a church. And the reason there was never an image of Jesus Christ because He never set for it. And I believe too that God wanted no one tribe to claim Him. But at the very end of that, there is a statement that says, if you have seen the face of love and kindness and forgiveness, then you have seen the face of God.
Right.
Which I totally agree.
I do too.
I totally agree.
I think that is so powerful.
Because you could, there's, it is a feeling and a belief that you cannot see.
Right. It is so powerful.
Right.
We're going to take a look. Ready? So, Frank, I am curious if you experience creativity and spirituality as being connected.
Yes.
Do you sense your spirituality guiding your creativity?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Raised a Christian.
Right.
My gift, as it was for my brother, was God-given. No other reason you could have it. because at a very young age we knew we had talent, you know, and then as it just grew from childhood on up to adulthood, and so it's always a blessing, really. Because I always say long before photography ever came on the scene, it was people like myself and my brother who depicted history, you know. And I've had the opportunity to paint Booker T. Washington, W.B. Du Bois, Carter G. Woodson, and Luther P. Jackson.
From
UVA.
Yeah. Wow. So you use paint sometimes? I noticed that a lot of your work is graphite.
Yeah, paint.
But you use
this is paint. That's you notice that the chair. See, the chair is graphite.
Right.
Where I originally done it. Piece behind her is graphite. That's graphite.
That's graphite.
Yeah. And that's a painting.
Yes.
Behind that.
Oh, okay.
Oil on wood.
It's oil.
Oil on wood.
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't think I've heard of any.
And I use deck stain. You know who used to do the graphite? I got the idea from a New Yorker from Whitfield Lovell, who paints on this stress wood. And he would use just graphite.
Oh, wow.
Paint. But I loved the way he did that. And once I saw this, I said, God, this is so cool. So I started it myself. And you can see I kept going with it. But then I said, I'm going to put paint on it over top of my graphite. And then I loved it. And that piece there reminded me of my aunt, my father's aunt down in Houston, Texas. And that's exactly the picture of her next to it.
And those are real eyeglasses she's wearing.
Yeah.
That's what I like about your work. Yeah. You put real things in there.
I love that.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And I love the way I painted it. What happened to me, I think, was totally spiritual.
Right. Now, did she pose for it?
No. No. I found a photograph very similar to that.
Oh.
And it's an old photograph. I guess it could have been late 1800s.
Oh.
And a woman sitting on a porch, and I said, wow, that just looks like my aunt, my father's aunt. And so the picture on the right actually was my father's aunt. And
the smaller one.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I see now.
And so I said, this is so historic because
it does.
She lived in a very small shack in Houston. And my cousin took us to meet them. And my cousin's name is Tex Harrison. Tex Harrison was a Harlem Globetrotter.
You just know everybody, don't you?
He was a Harlem Globetrotter. When we met him, he took us to meet him, my brother and I, in Houston.
That's great. What about the cup?
The cup I found, and actually the bottle on it is a Jack Daniels jug. And again, the reason I added that, because down the street, about 4 doors down, was Miss McGinnis.
Oh yes, the lady that lived to 107.
Yeah, Miss McGinnis.
Yeah.
And we used to go move her bed for her on occasion. And right behind that bed was a couple of fifths
of Jack Daniels. That was the secret to her age.
That was the secret to her longevity of her life.
That's right.
She had a little nip every day.
Yeah, Jack Daniels. Did you read that Jack Daniels really took the recipe from Uncle Nearest?
There's a woman who's got it now.
So now there's Uncle Nearest bourbon.
Right. I saw that story.
And that's a black man. He was a slave, and he's the one that had the recipe.
I saw that story.
That was an awesome story. I bought all the men I know a bottle of Uncle Nearest for Christmas. They all got Uncle Nearest. Ready? So tell me something. What would you consider your greatest achievement and your greatest failure?
Greatest achievement is to stay inspired. Stay inspired by working. The COVID it's put sort of a damper on a lot of things, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I'm very protective of my mother because, you know.
Absolutely.
At 96. But the greatest achievement, I think, is being inspired and inspiring someone else, because there are a couple of kids, and I knew I was inspired by Mr. Johnson, Walter Johnson, who was an art teacher at Burley. And then I was further inspired by him because he too was a Munford Point Marine in World War II, who was in the Battle of Okinawa and Iwo Jima, you know, as a black man, being one of the first Marines of World War II. So that was just like over the top for me. And I said, this is the most humble guy I know.
Wow.
Who was involved in some of the worst combat, who became a very humble art teacher.
Right.
Who inspired a lot of students.
Isn't that amazing?
Amazing. And so later on in life, a couple of kids that I knew, J.J. Johnson, who just finished a mural here on 10th Street, and Sahara Clemens, who she does murals, but she used to come in my shop, and so did J.J. We used to draw together, you know, and talk about art and do things. And so Sahara ended up with a scholarship to Rhode Island School of Design, and J.J., who went to VCU for a while, is back now because he's got a wife and kid, but he's doing murals, a couple of murals all over town. So
that's great.
He's very inspired, and so they'll tell you that I inspired them. One of them, I like to think that I inspire anybody who looks at my work, but for them to venture out and because like when Mr. Johnson is gone, I kind of got the village artist.
Right.
So when I'm gone, the village artist
the village will continue.
And so, yeah, I think that's probably my greatest achievement. What I do today is not for fame. I don't paint any of these to sell.
Right.
I paint them for me. You can like it or leave it. People don't like it. I don't care. Because nobody, I don't care what you do, nobody buys art unless it speaks to them.
Unless it speaks to them, exactly.
That's the only way you buy it.
That's the only way.
It could be off in left field. But
That's
if
the
it
truth.
doesn't speak to you, you know, you're not going to sell it. An African-American artist sold, a boy from New York, here a couple of years back. His painting sold for $240 million to a Japanese artist. And that boy, I cannot remember his name, and I think he's originally from, his parents are from the islands. But that boy used to run through the subways painting empty panels. And the police used to chase him all over the place when he was 19 years old.
It wasn't someone named Wigglesworth, was it?
No.
No, okay.
No.
Okay, because there's a
he had a strange name, but the galleries saw these paintings and said, "Can we find this kid?"
Wow.
He was 19 years old and said, "We'll pay him $60,000 a painting."
Just to come and, ooh.
And so they finally got him and, you know, started paying him all this money. And the next thing you knew, he contracted AIDS. And he died at the age of 26. The paintings he finished would lead to...
They went up in value. They went way up in value.
No one in America sold a painting for $240 million to an art collector. Was him, a young kid.
That's fabulous.
Just outstanding. I don't think... from every artist I've ever read about, usually did not come into any sort of fame until
after they were gone.
Yeah.
Well, let's try and keep you around. We'll try and keep you around. I want you to be famous, but I want you to be famous now.
My intention was never to be famous. It was just meant to paint and draw.
Just to paint and draw.
It was because it put me in another dimension.
Right.
It is where I always found peace.
Right.
In doing it, you know, and watching the outcome, that it becomes spiritual because you put your heart and your passion into it. So then you get to like it, you know. grows and grows and grows, and you like it. And so when you start this thing, and then you start something else, and then you start something else, and you start something else. And so I always had this, for instance, Blaise Gaston bought my first piece of The Man in the Jar.
Oh, yes.
And I from EJI, Canada, Equal Justice Initiative, I kept seeing they.
Well, that's who I see.
Yes.
In the jar.
And so I put this man's face in the jar because I kept seeing the dirt. And in my mind, I kept seeing the spirit of this man in the jar.
Yeah.
And so I put a person's face in the jar.
Yeah, it's beautifully done.
John Henry James. And the second piece came with the 400-year shelf life, and you can see the expiration date is 2019. So from 1619 to 2019.
To 2019.
Is a long time.
That is a long
That
time.
is the expiration date.
Right.
And so historically, what I see, and today, black art is probably the number one seller.
It's very, very popular.
It's very popular.
Very popular.
Because it has, it's been, for instance, someone like Henry Tanner.
Yeah.
Who Bill Cosby owns.
He owns a Henry Tanner.
He owns a Henry Tanner. And so now that is like through the roof.
That's right.
And when you look at African American art, it comes from a different place of culture.
It does.
It has many, many, many different sides to it. And it has a deeper history to it when we look at it. And we feel it, and once it comes about, you know, it's very compelling to have. You know, when I look at the late 1800s, early 1900s in African American art, they used African Americans to sell soap.
Everything.
Honey, to sell everything in such a sort of buffoonism way.
Yes.
But the art itself became very.
Exactly.
You know.
I don't remember the name of the artist, but I have remember there was a woman who used to paint little dolls with little scrub boards, and they would always be doing their work. She only did one of a black child, and I have that one.
You got.
I found it in some kind of antique shop or something, I don't know. But that's the only one she ever did of a little black child scrubbing, a little black doll scrubbing clothes, scrubbing her little doll clothes. It is so cute. Anyway, so how about any failures? Have you had any failures?
Oh, all the time. There's always people who don't, you know, I've done, I don't know how many portraits. And sometimes there was a woman, she was in her 80s when she asked me to do her portrait. She gave me a picture of her when she was 22. And so I painted her picture. And when she saw it, she said, "That's not me." And her sister came in, she said, "That looks more like you than you ever have looked, and that looks better than you."
Your drawing is
and
so precise.
She did. I said, you know, you don't have to pay for it if you don't want it. So I kept it and ended up taking it out to the pistol range and put some holes in it.
That's terrible.
And so I wasn't trying to get back at her. It just was, you know.
Well, it was a purge.
Yeah. And interestingly enough, I painted a woman in her wedding dress, and I cannot say whether she was Jewish or not, but she had a very pronounced bone here in her nose. So I softened it as much as I possibly could. And when I took it to her, she said,
She said, "That's not my nose."
And her husband looked at it, she said, "I told you you had a big nose." And I said, you can keep it if you want. If you don't, it's okay. And they called me the next day, and she said, I know I got a big nose. Can you just leave? I made it as soft as I could.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't want to.
Yeah, but the nose is her
enunciate, because, you know, I've been doing medical illustration.
I know.
I can put the bone in it.
Oh, that's funny.
That ended up, it ended up being okay.
You know? That's good.
But you know, you never know what I haven't had but probably 2 or 3 people not like it.
Yeah. I can't imagine anybody not
Thousands
liking your
of
work.
them.
I just can't imagine. Because you're so precise. You know, I mean, everything is, it is what it is.
It is what it is.
You know?
It's the illustration in it.
Yeah.
Learning to be an illustrator, which, again, God would direct me
Exactly.
to do things commercially.
Guiding that hand.
Right. In order to make a living at it.
Yeah. You've been blessed.
It's, all the way.
You've been blessed.
100%.
Yeah. You've been blessed with that fabulous mother.
100%.
That brought you here.
Oh yeah, my mama was always supportive. I think she would go sometimes, Lord, they all could have been doctors or Lord. And that's not what we wanted to be.
Right.
That is not what we wanted to be. We drew and painted
And
all
painted
the
all the time.
All the
All the time.
We got in trouble for it. I can't tell you how many times I've been in trouble for drawing when I should have been writing sentences. You know,
Yeah.
and I could probably draw it because we always learned early in life that a picture's worth 1,000 words.
It really
And I
is.
said, here we got your 1,000 word right here.
Right. You know, I don't think I've ever seen anything that you've written, but is your handwriting as precise as your drawing? No?
Yeah.
Because I have a friend who's an artist, and when she writes something, it looks like art. You just want to keep it. You want to keep the envelope that's addressed to you.
The guy I worked with named Joe Edens was a calligrapher, and he did the diplomas here for the university. He did the Kennedy, one of the Kennedy brothers, and some other people. And come to find out, I got to talking to Joe. And I said, Joe, were you in World War II? He said, yeah. And, you know, he could write beautifully. He wrote a book by hand.
Wow.
And so I said, well, Joe, what did you do during the war? He said, I diffused bombs. And when they got dropped and wouldn't go off,
He was there.
take those apart.
The stories.
Just like that. He was probably 80 years old. His hands were so steady.
And the hands were steady. Wow.
Unbelievable.
That's fabulous. That's
Unbelievable.
something. So, in a 2018 article, when asked about the direction your work is taking, you said, I'm certain it'll continue to be political, influenced by history with an eye to what the future might be.
Right.
How has that evolved for you in these last 4 years or few years? And what are some of your hopes for the future?
I have a piece. I always have something in mind, but I want to do my next focus of my brain is on the critical race theory. All of these books on the Confederacy, Lost Cause, and what have you, you know, space. Here's this black child looking through the books in the library, and we got Martin Luther King, CRT over here.
Oh, that's going to be fabulous.
But the big book is the Confederate book with the Lost Cause.
Right.
With the Confederate.
So you're working on that now?
It is in my mind. I did a
it's
sketch
still
of it.
It's still in your head.
Yeah, and I want to do that on wood, and I've got a bunch of these fake books that I'm going to put on the back of the books. You know, they look like real books. But I want to make this a library setting so that when you see this, I want you to have that moment.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And what is this that we can't learn? Because just in the paper today, there's this article about this governor and censorship. You know, always, and here we are back to 1959 and 56.
We are right back.
We're right back to those places that we got rid of, and now we're
and
back.
now we have to start all over again.
Yeah, and you know, I know people, and I'm not mad at anybody. And to think that I'm gonna get mad at somebody for something you had no control over today, but I want you to know about it. That's all I'm telling you. I just want you to know about it. I want you to understand that the reason, because I've gotten calls from newscasters on June 6th, on D-Day, 3 times, where they're black soldiers at Normandy. Yes. There was. Yes, there were.
Yep, they were there.
7 black soldiers would get the Medal of Honor in 1996 from World War II.
Wow.
For World War II. Medal of Honor from World War I, Henry Johnson from New York.
Yes, I remember.
They made a bust of him.
Mm-hmm.
But Henry was put out of the army. He was wounded. They took away his disability money because he spoke out about the treatment of black troops.
Right.
They didn't march until after the whites had marched down Fifth Avenue, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
So black soldiers marched separately. In Chicago, World War II, General Gavin, a white general, ordered the 555th Parachute Infantry Regiment, all black, to march down the street of Chicago. There's a picture, and you should see them brothers. Them brothers be shout.
Were they stepping?
I'm stepping. Them brothers be shout. You hear me?
I could just imagine. I could just visualize.
Yes, sir. At St. Emma, all of us being black,
Oh my God.
you could not out-drill us.
I could.
They would send white guys in there, and you could not touch them.
That's right.
You could not touch
Because
them.
you know, you guys were representing all of us.
All of us. Let me tell you something. We went to the mess hall. We'd be marching to the mess hall, and there's six columns of men in the company.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we get there, the company commander says, march time, march. So everybody just mark time. Therefore you can hear it.
You can hear it.
Hear it. And it said, column of 2's forward. And the first 2 columns of that company would move forward down the walkway. It was only wide enough for 2 columns. There's 2 big double doors right there.
Mm.
And the first sergeant was at the end of that door. And they said, column of 2's forward. And march down there, marching down there, half step. Sharp as hell. The first 4 men get to them 2 doors right there. And the first sergeant said, temptation! Clap, spin around and go in that door. And nobody else in the United States Army would you ever see.
You're making me want to get up and start marching.
It makes you want to get up and start marching. This is how we went for lunch.
Of course.
Right.
Of course. Precise.
Precise.
Perfect. Yep. Yep. In everything.
In everything. It was
everything.
It was so cool.
In everything.
Now I can tell you, hazing and hard time in that school was ridiculous.
Mm.
But it was very much. If you've ever seen the movie Full Metal Jacket,
I think I have.
if you've seen that movie,
Yeah, I think I have.
it is very much like basic training.
Right.
So imagine, I went through this twice. I went through this once in military school, then I went again
Oh my God.
in the service. And so, but I was prepared
Yeah.
because I knew
Mm-hmm.
when I got to the military
Mm-hmm.
that you keep your mouth shut
And do what you're told.
and do what you're told.
Right.
And we always knew that, and guys who had never been through it before, you do not understand that all this man is trying to do is get all 40 of you to go the same direction at the same time.
Right.
That's all he's doing.
That's all.
So he's going to kick you in the butt, holler and scream at you. And
Yeah.
people get so scared, they forget their left from their right.
Right. Now, wouldn't it be awesome if God could make all of us do what we're supposed to do at the same time?
Certainly.
It would just,
Certainly.
we wouldn't have all this mess,
Certainly.
you know?
Certainly.
We
If the
not.
devil wouldn't keep giving
If
you all
the
this
devil would-
misinformation.
The devil would just
The
go
devil
lay down
gives you
somewhere
all this misinformation.
and stop putting out all this misinformation.
All the time.
Yeah, yeah, it would really be something.
All the time.
Well, my dear, this has been a fabulous visit.
Well, thank you.
I love spending time.